Hello, I'm Carla McLaren, and I was thinking about something the other day, which is I used to have a frozen shoulder, and it's called adhesive capsulitis, meaning the capsule of my shoulder was filled with glue and it was scar tissue. And I could only raise it like this and sort of painfully so. And that started a whole process of physical therapy and me learning how to use my arms better because I type all the time and I use a mouse. Mises are very hard on your shoulder. This movement, right, actually impinges your shoulder. So if you've got your shoulder turned this way, you're going to hurt yourself. So I learned how to bring my shoulders out, to switch mouse every couple of days so that I'm not injuring, overworking one arm, and lots of exercises, and just learned how to take care of my shoulder better, take care of my whole body better, because writing is such an intensely, it's a weirdly active, exercise, because, I've got really strong hands and wrists, but you can hurt yourself. So I did. And so now I show you this. I have a complete range of motion back, right? I can do anything with this shoulder now that I need to do because I learned how to own a shoulder, right? Instead of just, throwing myself at writing and being, well, I'm not a very good body owner. So developing a complete range of motion is what you want in all of your joints if you can, right? Sometimes you can't, but to try when you're working, this is how I type. So I've got this cramped, finger behavior. So one of the important things is to, pull them out this way, right? If you're a writer, if you do any kind of repetitive motion, you've probably learned how to take care of yourself so that you don't hurt yourself. Yeah. And I said earlier, I said a complete range of emotion, because that's what I've been thinking about. That it's important for our joints to have a complete range of motion. Yeah. But it's also important for us to have a complete range of emotion. And I'll tell a story on myself. When I was very young, I experienced a tremendous amount of childhood assault. And it sort of set me up for many of the difficulties that I would have later in my life, of hyperempathy, of kind of extreme emotional explosiveness. And I did not have a complete range of emotion. I also was pretty dissociated, so I didn't really have a complete range of how to live in a human body either. I figured it out, but one of my big things was I used anger a lot. And thankfully, my family just sort of let me do it, which is very unusual. Most women, most girls are not allowed to be angry or show it. So I was a little rage machine. But I felt strongly that sadness and grief were signs of weakness. So I refused to feel them, and I refused to let sadness come into my life. And this was for years and years and years, where I didn't cry. And what would happen was interesting is, I have you ever hit yourself in the nose in such a way that tears just, like explode out of your eyes? I would hit my nose regularly or drop something really heavy on my toe. And have you done that, where you drop something so heavy on your toe that just your tears come out? So my body was clearly trying to get some of those tears out. Um, but I kind of realized in my late teens, like, you're going to break your toes and your nose if you do not learn how to cry. And so for a period of time, I cried at everything because I had so much, unshed tears, right? To develop that range of emotion, I had to make the decision that I didn't want to be so enraged all the time, so sarcastic, um, such a jerk. And I wanted to learn how to be more of a whole person. It was like I wanted to be a better emotion owner. And so I developed the capacity to feel sadness and grief alongside anger, and eventually learned all of the different emotions. We work with a model of 17 emotions in 4 families, right? The happiness family, the anger family, the fear family, and the sadness family. So I use myself as an experimental field of how do we develop emotional range. And then I began teaching others. And then that's how the work that eventually became dynamic emotional integration began. It began on a very broken, traumatized, messed up, stubborn as hell person who didn't want to live with adhesive capsulitis of the soul and wanted to see, is trauma the only story in my life, or is healing and becoming a wounded healer and living as fully as I can going to be the story of my life? And so that's where I went with it. But I wanted to talk about this full range of emotion because in the olden days, in the bad days, people thought that emotion was like down here, down there, just blah. And then rationality was up here, and spirituality were up here, and emotions were like, no. Luckily, we understand more than that now. And it turns out that rationality and emotion are here. They're working together, and spirituality and emotion are here, and they're working together. That emotions are a fundamental aspect of cognition, social intelligence, your capacity to think and decide and act. Emotions are everywhere in everything you do. So developing a full range of emotion means you become a more intelligent social and emotional and cognitive and spiritual and rational and logical and musical. And right, you become more able and you develop more capability in this job of being human. So my books help you develop a full range of emotion. And so do all the courses at Empathy Academy. Every month at empathyacademy.org, there's a link below, we have 1 or 2 courses on emotions, sometimes single emotions, sometimes the whole group of them, sometimes on empathy. Empathy, it turns out, is an entirely emotional skill. Empathy is based on emotion. So if you do not have a full range of emotion, you will not have a full range of empathy. And by that, I mean that your empathy will likely drop and kind of go away. If you are in the presence of an emotion you yourself do not know how to function around, that you don't have any practice for. So for instance, when I was I'll just be angry, thank you, and I don't need any other emotions person, when people would cry in front of me or feel grief, I had no patience for that crap. I was like, suck it up, buttercup. I was a jerk. I was such a jerk. And my empathy stopped in the presence of other people's tears and grief, which is really a crime against humanity, Carla, from the past, right? That was just really awful. I understand why I couldn't cry and feel grief, because I was still running on the fumes of trauma. I was still running on the fumes of dissociation, and that anger's job is to set boundaries. That anger and rage was helping set boundaries around a fundamentally disordered psyche, right? Anger was doing a beautiful job, and I couldn't afford sadness or grief. But my empathy was truncated and incomplete because I could not be present with the emotions of others. So for you, it may be different emotions. Like, I'm okay when people are angry. I'm like, bring it, pal. Like, I grew up. I was raised on the anger, right? So I have lots of empathy for angry people. Let me think of an emotion that I have a hard time with now. I think I'm good with most of them. I think I have fairly well developed range of empathy because I understand what the emotions are doing. Sometimes when people are angry and they have no skills and they're just being mean and thoughtless and jerks, I kind of want to take them, in a headlock and give them a noogie and say, that's a beautiful emotion. You're wasting it, you dummy. But I don't do that, right? I don't do that. So If you can develop a full range of emotion, you can develop a full range of empathy, you can develop a full range of intelligence, of cognition, of logic, your capacity to understand music and art and drama will increase. Um, you will have a shoulder that works. You will have a psyche that works. So I welcome you into a full range of emotion. Dynamic emotional integration is the process that I developed, and I have licensees, or I don't have licensees. I am surrounded by colleagues in many countries who have become licensed in dynamic emotional integration, and they teach workshops, and they teach at Empathy Academy, and they do DEI consultations. DEI is dynamic emotional integration. They do DEI consultations. So there is so much, there's this whole world waiting for you within your emotional realm. Each emotion contains genius, specific kinds of genius. Every emotion is valuable. There's no such thing as a negative emotion. There's no such thing as a positive emotion. All emotions are crucial to your functioning as a human being, as an intelligent person, and as an empathic person in a world that so desperately needs the full range of empathy, and not just this fake empathy that's all about, oh, tell me how you feel, but don't tell me how you feel about emotions I don't know how to work with, because my empathy is going to go away. All right, so think about this full range of emotion. Do you have any emotions that, like me, you told yourself, I will never feel that emotion, and then your poor body and your poor psyche have to find ways to hit you in your nose or drop heavy things on your toe so that you can cry like a normal human being? Okay. Thank you. And thanks to all of your emotions for waiting around like mine did until you have the time and space you need to experience them in their fullness and in their genius. Your emotions are not the problem, and they never were. Your emotions come to help you deal with the problem. Welcome them all.